Hello, and welcome to another episode of Casual Learning. I'm your host, John Bannan. What's the deal with faith healings? Now, the reason I'm raising this particular issue at this time is because uh, the coronavirus is rampaging across the world and the United States. Uh, and this raises an interesting question about um, should you seek a cure to the coronavirus through your faith in Jesus to heal you or to protect you against an infection. And the flip side of that is also atheists might argue that if you don't do that, then you're showing a lack of faith in your belief in Jesus or God as real. Now, the answer is no, you should not seek to protect yourself from the coronavirus through faith alone or through prayer alone. And no, it does not mean that you're showing a lack of faith in Jesus or God, or that Jesus and God doesn't exist because they're not protecting you from something like the coronavirus. Now, why is that? The first thing is to understand that sicknesses, diseases, viruses, even, are all a result of the process of evolution. And evolution is a nasty business. It involves a lot of death and suffering and bloodshed, and that's simply how it works. Um, Now, I've already done a video explaining to you how evolution it has an evil side to it. There's no doubt about it. There's a lot of suffering and evil that goes along with evolution. And that's just a result of evolution. I mean, sicknesses and viruses have either evolved to exist, or or evolution has prevented them from being weeded out or annihilated. Viruses, for instance, like the coronavirus, is an evolved organism that mutated from another virus and suddenly appeared and is now infecting the world. That's it. That's um, a clear example of evolution at work. Now, evolution isn't amoral process. Evolution doesn't look at things as either evil or good. Evolution is simply amoral. It has no thoughts about whether something is evil or good. It doesn't have any thoughts at all. It's just a process. It's essentially a process, a chemical process. And I've also done a video explaining how God ultimately isn't responsible for the evil and the suffering that evolution causes through things like the coronavirus or diseases, or even ultimately the fact that everyone dies, which is really a part of evolution as well. Because God is forced to use uh, matter to create things, and that matter doesn't have an inkling about good or evil. And it's because God's power to create is an uncaused power. Uh, there's nothing God can do about it. He can't create his own powers. He's stuck with whatever powers God has, which is all powers. Um, but God can't recreate or create his own powers because he's an uncaused being. He's not created, so he can't create new powers. God has the powers that are uncaused, and those powers apparently include the ability to create things, but those created material things use atoms and molecules, and those things are amoral things. So evolution is God uses evolution to create things using amoral particles like molecules and atoms. And this has a consequence that amoral processes like evolution exist, and that can be evil. Those processes involve evil. It's not God's fault. God has an uncaused power, and he's using this uncaused power, which includes amoral particles, which results in evil processes or evil that may occur through amoral processes like evolution. However, as I explained in these other videos, uh, on the balance, it's much better to exist even through an amoral process like evolution than to not exist at all. So, given the choice between either using evolution to create humans or not having humans at all, the evil that goes along with evolution is clearly a much greater good than not having humans at all, just not existing. So God is definitely excused on this one. It's a result of his uncaused power. The fact that he uses it is a greater good. So uh, don't blame God for things like the coronavirus or diseases or even death. This is a result of his uncaused power to create, and it's better that you exist than that you don't exist. So faith healing. Well, understanding that it's really not God's fault that things like the coronavirus exist. It's really these amoral particles, this uncaused power that's the reason for it. Um, don't blame God. However, also don't expect God uh, to save you from these things because they are a result of evolution. And this amoral process exists and it creates life and it comes with suffering and death, including new viruses like the coronavirus. And God is not going to stop the evolutionary process and all the good that comes from that. Because that would be the same as saying, well, humans shouldn't exist, so you shouldn't start evolution to begin with. And the greater good is that evolution does exist and that humans exist. And God's not going to stop evolution. It's a greater good, which means things like the coronavirus are going to come into existence. So don't expect God to save you from the coronavirus or any sort of disease or even death. Now, there is the idea of faith healing itself, faith healing, which uh, in Christianity would be the belief that prayer, uh, especially to Jesus, would save you or even cure you from disease or illness or even death in a sense. Now, uh, should you believe or believe that your best protection, is your faith in Jesus as the Son of God, and that He will protect you from illness or disease or something like the coronavirus? And the answer is no. And the reason for that is you should look at the Gospels themselves and look at what Jesus actually cures in the Gospels. He's a miracle worker and he is involved in cures. But what specifically is it that he cures? Look at the list of what he cures. And you'll find that uh, this list involves essentially uncurable ailments. For instance, what does Jesus cure in the Gospels? You look at the Gospels, the things that Jesus cures are they're incurable ailments at the time that Jesus walked the earth. He cures things like death, blindness, deafness, paralytics. He heals cripples. In one instance, he healed a withered hand. He cures lepers and apparently somebody with dropsy, which is a swelling of the body. But these things all have one thing in common, which is these are not things that you can find a cure for 2,000 years ago. You can't cure these things. That's why they went to Jesus, because they hadn't, the people who got cures, there was no other hope. There was no other place they could go. And obviously, some of these ailments are still incurable today. You're not going to find a doctor who's going to cure death or blindness. Um, I mean, they've made some advancements on blindness, but you're still not going. There's not going to be a pill that you can take to cure that. Deafness, they made some advancements. That's still a tough one. Paralytics, crippled people. There's certain diseases that cause that, or maybe um, spinal fractures. These are still very difficult things to try to cure, even today. Um, Leprosy, uh, I don't know. I don't even think leprosy is even curable today. Um, Dropsy, you might have some sort of medical treatment for that. The issues that people were looking at 2,000 years ago, these were incurable diseases and issues. Um, a few of the other issues, we're not even sure what it was. Like Gospels talk about Jesus curing the high fever of Peter's mother. Well, a high fever can be caused by all sorts of things. Some of those things are incurable, but the Gospel isn't clear as to what exactly it is that Jesus cured, what the disease was. Um, there was another story where Jesus cured a woman who was bleeding constantly, but we still don't really know what it was, what the condition was that she had that he cured. But you can tell from this list that Jesus is curing the incurable. This is why these things are miracles. This is why people were seeking him out, because they had nowhere else to go. So when you're thinking about faith healing today, faith healing is reserved for those conditions where there just isn't any help anywhere else. These are miraculous cures. Um, so if you have some sort of disease process or virus or condition where the medical profession can help you, can give you some help, well, you go to the doctor first. These are not these are not conditions upon which faith healing should even be attempted. Faith healing is only for those conditions where there is no other hope. That you are praying for a miracle because there's no place to go. There's no doctor who can help you. You don't go. I mean, you don't use faith healing or your belief in God or Jesus or prayer to think that I can just go outside and walk among the crowds and not expect to get the coronavirus. That's not what this is for. Certainly, prayer can help, but understand that biblical Christian faith healing is for incurable things, and you shouldn't be ignoring doctors or not going to hospitals when doctors and hospitals can give you help. Faith healing is really reserved for incurable diseases, viruses, conditions, incurable, where there is no other help besides prayer in Jesus Christ. So keep that in mind. Um, so go to the doctor, go to the hospital first, always, always. Despite there is no good argument that says a Christian has to rely on faith healing for every condition. That's just not true. Faith healing is reserved for the incurable, where you have no other help whatsoever, and you're requesting a miracle, really. So it is not a valid objection that God isn't curing us of all our diseases, therefore there must not be a God. It is not a valid argument that you lack faith in Jesus because you're not going out and walking among the crowds and not expecting to get the coronavirus, for instance. That is not a fair objection at all. And it's very dangerous for people to suggest that or make those sorts of arguments to you or a person with faith. Very ill advised. Go to a doctor, go to a hospital. You can pray, but go to those places first. And if there is absolutely no one who can help you in the medical profession, and you're left with uh, faith-based healing only, where you're seeking a miracle, understand that that's the end of the line. That's the last thing you should use is a faith-based healing as your primary source of healing. Uh, so, with the coronavirus spreading throughout the country, I thought this might be uh, an interesting thing to talk about and sort of explain, um, you know, the merits of the idea of faith-based healing. All right, if you have any questions or comment, please leave them below. Press the subscribe button. I appreciate it. And, stay safe and take care, everybody.